Hello and welcome to Art Masters with me, Mrs. Portilla. Today we are going to be learning about a Series 1 artist for Art Masters. We're going to learn a little bit of history about this artist. We're going to see some slides of their work, and we're going to see a little glimpse of what this month's art project will be. So who's ready to get started and learn about this month's artist? Today we're going to be learning about famous artist Winslow Homer. He was an artist who actually did not like being famous. He would actually tell the reporters he felt outraged if reporters asked him personal questions. That's his business and nobody else's. Homer was born on the East Coast of America in Boston. We know that he was always fashionably dressed and interested in style. He was strong and healthy, and he was a fine cook. He loved gardening and fishing. We know that as a young artist, he lived in New York and had many artist friends. But the last 27 years of his life were spent in a made-over stable in the North Atlantic. It was miles from the post office, and it lacked electricity and heating. But it was there that he came to know the ocean better than any other artist of his time. He started his life as an artist by illustrating for newspapers. This was before photographs were used, so they would use artists to draw the images. Homer sketched events in America's history. He sketched Abraham Lincoln when he became president. He also illustrated the Civil War. He had to be very fast at sketching. He would have to sketch a picture while watching it happen. Then in his studio, he would draw that same picture on a block of wood. Other newspaper employees would cut the lines of his picture into the wood. The wood was then inked and paper was pressed to get to a print, kind of like a stamp. These prints were always in black and white and very time-consuming. They were called wood block prints. Today, it can all be done on a computer. These are pictures from newspaper ads during Homer's life showing the latest products for sale. Homer probably typed on a typewriter like this one here. Can you see the advertised price for a man's suit in Homer's time? It was only $10. The camera was still very new. You could buy one for the price of a suit, but the film came inside the camera, and when it ran out, you would have to send the whole camera back. As you can see, men's hats were in fashion in the late 1800s, and Homer included them in his paintings whenever he could. This is a painting that really launched Homer's career as a fine artist. Homer was very interested in painting soldiers sitting around fires in the evening rather than painting them when they were fighting. Many think this is one of Homer's best paintings. Can you tell what's going on? The title is a good hint, Prisoners from the Front. The date is 1866, and that tells us it's just after the Civil War. Would you say this painting is realistic, or abstract? This is very realistic. It has many details. Homer continued to paint in a realistic style for the rest of his life, but his subject matter never changed. He always painted American scenes. This one is called High Tide, and this woodblock print gives us a special look at American life in the 1800s. What are these girls doing? They're swimming in the ocean. Have styles of bathing suits changed from the late 1800s? Look, they even wore bathing shoes, kind of like water socks. Homer illustrated and painted his girlfriend several times in the early 1870s. He wanted to marry her, but as an artist, he didn't have a steady income, so he remained a bachelor for his life. This was an illustration printed in black and white on a woodblock. Homer painted an oil painting based on it also. Do you see the difference? The sketch to the colored painting. What has he changed? The dog had been replaced by a hat. There was a hat. There's the dog. The steamship has been replaced by a sailboat, and the bay is better defined by the addition of a hill in the background. A trip to the beach today is so different from that in Homer's time. Can you imagine what it might have been like in elementary school? Homer wanted to create art that would not be compared to European art. He wanted his art to be American. One of his favorite American subjects was the country school. This is one of a series of paintings about schools. The critics and public schools alike all love this painting. Again, without words, Homer tells all about the country school. Do you notice the students with bare feet? The students on the left all have bare feet, and the students all on the right all have shoes on. If you look carefully, you can tell the students on the right have finer clothes on too. Shoes were optional in the 1800s. It has been said that Homer developed in his paintings a clear separation between strong barefooted boys and weaker boys who wore shoes. The next painting in this country school series is about everyone's favorite time at school. Recess. Because there was no special playground or equipment, students made up their own games. One game was called Snap the Whip. Why do you think this game is not allowed today? Someone could get hurt. How are the boys dressed differently from the way you dress for school? Well, they don't have shoes on, and they have suspenders on. They have some hats on. Has Homer made the barefooted boys stronger? Yes, the two boys at the left wearing shoes have already been thrown by the whip. Homer painted happy memories and happy people. His paintings reminded us of happy days we will never forget. The children Homer painted were no little angels sitting for portraits in their best clothes. Do these children look full of energy and fun? Yes, he wanted you to feel their freedom and their enjoyment of being outside. Homer painted many scenes of boys and girls outside of the school. How many of you would like to be with these boys in the open field? What makes this scene so inviting? The boys seem very comfortable, so we know it's not too hot, not too cold. They are far away from anyone who could bother them. Does your barefoot theory hold true here? Yes, the barefoot boys seem strong and confident. What's the first thing you see in this painting? The bright shirts of the boys. Why did you see that first? It's the lightest and brightest. The first thing you see in a painting is called the focal point. Homer made you see that focal point by darkening the background with darker values. Because he worked in both black and white and color, he was able to master the use of light and dark values in his paintings better than most painters. Without values, paintings would be flat. The use of lightness and darkness in art is called value. As you can see, one color can have many different values. A brown can be very deep and dark, and another brown can be so light it almost looks like white. Homer was a master at using value in his work. So you can see there's lighter areas of color and darker areas of color. Look at the blue-green color of the sea. Homer has used all the different values of the color from almost black in the corners to almost white. His sea is alive with light playing on the waves. It is not flat. Who can find the focal point? Waves against the boat. That's because of the light and the dark. What is the darkest part of the painting? The boat, the shadow on the sail, and the shadows in the water. If you squint your eyes, those shadows really pop. What is the lightest area? The sky, the clouds, and the white caps. Notice how Homer places the lightest part against the darkest part? He makes us look right at the boat by doing that. That's how we find that focal point. It's where our eye gets drawn to. Light values placed next to dark values create contrast. Why do you think Homer painted the sky so white behind the boys? For contrast, he wanted the boys to stand out. Look very carefully at the white sky behind the boy on the right. When Homer first painted this painting, he had included a sailboat there, but that boat did not contrast enough with the boy, so he removed it. Which boys are sailing the boat? The barefooted boys. Which boys are just lying around? The boys with shoes. Can you think of a title for this painting? Homer had two different titles. One was Lifeline, the other was Saved. It shows a heroic rescue at sea by the Coast Guard. Do you feel the danger? If you look closely in the upper left-hand corner, you could see the tattered sails of the wrecked ship. Homer's illustrating jobs kept him in New York until later in his career, when he was able to give up illustrating and concentrate on painting full-time. Because it was no longer necessary to live in New York, he moved to his family's estate on the coast of Maine. There he had a stable converted into a studio with views of the rugged coast. Homer loved the sea during storms. When the seas were rough, Homer would put his boots on and go right down to the water and sketch. It was one of those sketching trips that he witnessed the rescue at sea that inspired this painting. He was about 50 years old when he painted this painting, and everyone thought it was a masterpiece. It sold on the first day of exhibition to a woman for $2,500. That was a lot of money back then. The art critics praised it also. Its popularity prompted Homer to paint 2 more versions of it. Are there many bright colors in this painting? Not really. Homer used mostly dull colors with a small splash of bright red on the scarf. Look at his use of value, or lights and darks, in this painting. What is the lightest part of the picture? The waves and the whitecaps. Notice how the light waves form the perfect background for the dark figures of the people. Even though Homer is known for his oil paintings, he was one of the best watercolorists America has ever seen. In Homer's later years, he painted only in watercolor and became a master at it. The medium suited him well because it allowed him to quickly paint an outdoor scene. Do you think this deer posed for Homer? No. Although Homer, unlike most artists, was fast enough to sketch a deer before it ran away, he usually would finish the art in his studio. Has anyone ever been lucky enough to spot a deer? Homer has captured that magical moment when by chance he has come upon such a beautiful creature in the Adirondack Mountains. Homer was outraged by the brutal killing of deers in the Adirondacks by professional hunters, and he wanted to make it very clear how he felt about it. He used watercolor to plan a painting that would show how he felt about killing the deers. Some of his planning sketches were so detailed and realistic, they looked like finished paintings. Homer loved to use watercolor rather than pencil to make a sketch for an oil painting because he could work out the color values more easily. Let's see the oil painting that Homer made from this watercolor sketch. Homer called this painting Hound and Hunter. Do you think this painting took a long time to paint? Yes, it has a lot of details. He spent more than a week just on the boys' hands. Notice they are all sunburned, and then the wrists are somewhat sunburned, but not as brown. And the arm, where the sleeve is pulled back, is not sunburned at all. Some of the details have more meaning than others. Look carefully at the hunter. Does he look like a nice person? No, in fact, Homer has given him a mean-like appearance. After Homer completed work on this painting, his aging father died. Having already lost his mother, Homer painted perhaps one of the loneliest paintings of the century. During this time in his life, Homer made many painting trips to and from the Bahamas, Cuba, and Florida. Each trip took him through the Gulf Stream, where the waters are treacherous, and there often could be seen a dilapidated and empty boat floating. It was a haunting image, and one that Homer had sketched often before using the idea in this painting. Homer has woven a story of suspense for us. We can tell what has happened, and we can guess what might happen. It looks like the mast of the boat has broken off and there had been a storm. What might happen? Well, it looks like there's sharks feeding in the area, and there are whitecaps and swells. What has Homer added to the scene that could be helpful? If you look all the way in the back, there's a ship on the horizon, and the sky is clearing. In order to see the sharks in the foreground that clearly, some people feel that the viewer would have to be in the water with them. Or has Homer raised the viewpoint just enough to keep the viewer out of the water? How many feel they're in the water with the sharks? How many feel they're just above the water? We will never know because Homer never liked to be asked to explain his pictures. He felt that if a picture needed to be explained, it was a failure. So when he was asked to explain this picture, of course, he refused. The Metropolitan Museum of Art purchased this painting for the highest purchase price Homer had ever received. After the success, Homer continued to paint, mostly watercolors, for the next 10 years. 2 years before his death, he suffered a stroke. In spite of this, he continued to paint and finished his last painting, titled Right and Left. Here, Homer has tackled the theme of hunter and hunted once again in a surprising way. This shows a vivid close-up of the hunter's target, 2 golden-eyed ducks shot as they rise from the choppy water. The title, Right and Left, is a term for bringing down 2 birds. How did Homer create the focal point? With the light and the dark, so he used the values. Here's a photo of Homer in his studio painting that picture of the man in the boat. You could see that all those values, when it's in black and white, you could see the light and the dark. So for our project, you'll either be doing a sailboat using black and white values, or you might be doing a landscape scene of a lighthouse or the rocks with the water. But you can see that we're just using black and white to create the values, the lights and the darks. So I hope you enjoyed learning about Winslow Homer and look forward to doing his art project.